So hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to my November TBR. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I'm hoping to read in November. So on Booktube, November is Nonfiction November, which is a month-long readathon held by Olive from A Book Olive and Gemma from Nonfic Books. I'm hoping to take part in Nonfiction November. I took part last year and really enjoyed it, and I have quite a few nonfiction books sat on my shelf looking at me that I would like to get to. However, I'm not going to read only nonfiction in November because I don't think that really kind of suits my reading style. So I thought I would go through today some of the non-fiction books on my TBR for Nonfiction November, and also some of the fiction books that I'm hoping to read in the month of November. One thing I need to do at the start of November is catch up with my Dance to the Music of Time long-term read-along. I am one book behind. I haven't read October's book because of Victober, so I'll need to be reading in the month of November October's book, The Soldier's Art, which is number 8 in the series, and number 9 in the series, The Military Philosophers, which is November's book. Both of them I have on audiobook, and both of them are only about 6 hours long, so that's not going to take me very long and definitely doable this month. Then another priority for the month of November is Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. So we have a book club at work, and the book club is discussing this book in November, and it meets on I think like the 6th or the 7th of November, so I need to get through this in the first few days of November. But hopefully it's not very long, and I've heard really good things about it, so I think I should be able to do that. I've heard a lot of good things about Celeste Ng, and I can't remember what things I have heard about this book and what things I have heard about her other book, Little Fires Everywhere, which means I can't remember what this is about, but I often quite enjoy that when going into a book. And I've heard this is really good. I've heard a lot of great things about her writing, especially from Leanne Rose. I'll link her Booktube channel down below, so hopefully I will enjoy this one. Now, another few things I'm hoping to get to in November are some Christmas novellas by Charles Dickens. I know November may seem a little bit early for Christmas novellas, but I really want to do, at the beginning of December, a Christmas Dickens Author Week talking about Dickens' 5 Christmas novellas. I read one back in October, and that was The Cricket on the Hearth, but there are 4 more for me to read, which are The Haunted Man, and The Chimes, and A Christmas Carol, which I have in here, and then also The Battle of Life, which I have in this one. So I'm looking forward to reading those 4. I don't necessarily need to reread The Christmas Carol. I know it well enough that I can make a video on it without it, but I also kind of want to reread it because I love it. But I might save that for the very end of November, as that is a more Christmassy one, and read some of the less Christmassy ones towards the beginning. But all of them are very short, and again won't take me very long. However, the fiction book that I intend to take up the majority of my reading this month, and which I don't intend to finish this month, is War and Peace. This has been on my TBR for a very long time. I started reading it for a read-along held by Anne from Beyond the Pages and Yamini from The Skeptical Reader about a year and a half ago, and I read the first 200 pages and loved it, and then I just fell behind because this book is so heavy, and half the dialogue is in French and like translated in footnotes, which I just found really frustrating. But I have bought myself a Kindle edition, so much less heavy, and a version of the book in which all of the French is translated into English as well as the Russian, and I'm really hoping to get to it soon. I said in my reading goals for 2018 that this was one of my main priorities this year, and I have just failed to pick it up. So I thought what I'd do, as Nonfiction November, after the first week when I expect to get through most of the rest of the things I've spoken about so far, I want to dedicate Nonfiction November to, on my way into work on the train, I will read War and Peace, and on my way back I will read a non-fiction book, and I'll just do that for the whole of the month, and I think I should be able to get a fair way through War and Peace and then be able to finish it off in December, because I've been meaning to read it for so long. I'm sure I will love it. I loved Anna Karenina by him, and I really enjoyed the television adaptation of War and Peace that was on a few years ago. I really liked the 200 pages I read. I just fell out of it, and I need to get back on and make myself read it, and I'm sure that I will enjoy it when I do. That is all of the fiction reading I'll be doing in November, but I do have quite a few things on my list for non-fiction November. I'm not sure how many of these I will get through, but these are some of the non-fiction books on my TBR that I'm hoping to pick up this month. For non-fiction November, there are 4 challenges, or 4 prompts perhaps, 4 pairs of words that you can use to suggest what you might read in the month of November. The first prompt is pastime/pastime, and as someone who loves history and is fascinated by the past, obviously the books I have for this challenge are to do with pastime, they are to do with history. One history book I've been meaning to read for ages is Silk Road's A New History of the World by Peter Frankopan. Nick read this a few years ago and found it really interesting, and I've been meaning to read it ever since. Basically, the premise of this book, Silk Road, is that it is a history of the world and sort of civilization, but from a slightly different angle. The idea being that often in Western history we kind of view the Roman Empire as the like centre or the like starting point of the history of modern civilization. Basically in Silk Road he kind of argues that other cultures and civilizations, especially the Persian Empire, have actually been more instrumental in kind of affecting the way society works today, which sounds very interesting, and I've got that on audiobook, so I'm hoping to start this at the end of November. I don't imagine I'm gonna get through it all this November because I think it's quite long, but it sounds really interesting and definitely one I'd like to read. read. And I also have 2 other history books here. This is Eavesdropping on Jane Austen's England by Roy and Leslie Adkins. This was on my TBR for Jane Austen July and I just didn't get round to picking it up, but it sounds really interesting. It is a social history of life in Jane Austen's England, and obviously liking Jane Austen, being really interested in the Regency period and the history of the early 19th century, I think this is one I will definitely enjoy. And then I also have this book which I'm very excited about. This is Queen Victoria, Daughter, Wife, Mother, Widow by Lucy Worsley. I read Lucy Worsley's biography of Jane Austen back in July and absolutely loved it. It was brilliantly written, so engaging, so fun and readable and moving and powerful, and I just absolutely adored it. And then I heard she was coming out with a book about Queen Victoria and I was desperate to read that too. And then, because I work at Hachette and Lucy Worsley is published by a different division of Hachette, Lucy Worsley came to Hachette to do a talk about her book on Queen Victoria, which she had previously done on her book on Jane Austen too, and I went along to the talk and it sounded fantastic. So I asked Hodder if they would send me a review copy and they very kindly said that they would, and I'm so excited to get to this. I know how much I loved her biography of Jane Austen, and I know obviously I'm fascinated with the Victorians, but I don't actually know that much about Queen Victoria herself, and I just think this is going to be a really, really interesting history and one I can't wait to get to. The next prompt is self/shelf, for which I'm going to be picking up The Guilty Feminist by Deborah Frances White. Now I've got a proof copy of this which I picked up via work, but I also have the book on audiobook and I'm hoping to listen to it because I think it will be really interesting, especially as it is, I think, quite funny as well as really interesting and complicated. Deborah Frances White is a podcaster, and at the Hachette showcase last year, because this book is another one published by Hachette, she came along and did a bit of a talk about this book and it sounded absolutely fascinating. And the way she opened that talk at Hachette, she said, "I'm a feminist, but I once, on a women's march, went into a department store to go to the bathroom and then got distracted by a handbag and bought it and therefore lost the march." And she spoke about quite a lot of things like that, of kind of contradictions in life, I suppose, with being a feminist, but also like living a life and knowing that you can't live every moment of your life by a particular kind of ideology, which I just found really, really interesting. And I think this is going to be really interesting and fairly like applicable to me, I suppose. So hence why I'm going to put it on the self challenge for Nonfiction November. My boyfriend Nick just finished listening to this on audiobook as well and found it really interesting. So I'm looking forward to reading this as well and having a chat with him about it too, because I know he found it interesting and I'm sure I will too. So this is another one I'm really looking forward to and definitely a priority for this month. I think I will be listening to this on audiobook before I start listening to Silk Roads. The next reading prompt for Nonfiction November is wander/wonder, and I have 2 things that I have picked out for this. In terms of the wandering side of this prompt, I have decided to pick up a travel book, and that is Notes from a Small Island by Bill Bryson. I don't have a copy now, but I've reserved my copy at the library and hopefully it will come in at some point during Nonfiction November. It tells me it is like one of the funniest things he has ever read, and I know that I like Bill Bryson. I really enjoyed his history book One Summer, which I read a few years ago and loved, so I'm hoping I will really enjoy Notes from a Small Island as well. It is basically a slightly satirical look at Britain from a slightly American perspective, which I think sounds really fun, and Bill Bryson is very entertaining, so I'm really looking forward to that one. And then on both the wandering and wondering side, I have Reading Lolita in Tehran. This book was given to me as a Christmas present last year and I've been really interested to read it. It's about a secret reading group that was set up in Tehran by women who wanted to read classic Western literature that was banned in their country, and it sounds really, really interesting and I guess fits the prompt in terms of being about another country to where I'm from, in terms of wandering, and also kind of about intellectual curiosity, so wondering. The final prompt of Nonfiction November, and I have realised now that I've definitely picked out far more books that I can read in 1 month, but there we go. The final prompt of Nonfiction November is micro/macro, and I have picked 2 books for here that fit the kind of micro side, 2 books that are microcosm histories, I suppose, so again they also fit like pastime, I guess, as well, but they're books that are about kind of particular individuals or cases in history and are quite sort of in-depth case studies of a particular thing in history, in Victorian history specifically. Here is The Suspicions of Mr. Witcher, or The Murder at Rose Hill House by Kate Summerscale. This is supposed to be absolutely amazing. It is a true crime novel, I suppose, about a particular crime that happened in the Victorian period, and it's supposed to be brilliant. I've heard nothing but good things about this book, and I know my mum really liked it, so I'm really looking forward to picking up this one. This is definitely, I think, another priority for this month, and another one, in fact, that I got for Christmas last year, so about time I got to it. I then also have The Diaries of Hannah Culwick, Victorian Maidservant. This has been on my TBR for ages, and I might get to it this month, I might not. I might might start and read a little bit of it. I'm not sure how engaging it will actually be to read because it is literally someone's diary from the 19th century. Now, Hannah Collock was a Victorian maidservant, which I think I would really like to read the Victorian diaries of, just to learn about her sort of everyday duties and her life. But she also had a long-term and slightly odd relationship with an upper-class man called Arthur Munby, and I believe that her diaries are also, like, at points fairly sexually explicit, and I'm less interested in reading about her sex life and more interested in reading about her Victorian maid work. So I don't know what quite the balance will be in this diary. Regardless, they're supposed to be really, really interesting and kind of great historical sources if you're interested in the Victorian period, and a lot of history books I've read about the Victorian period sort of quote from and use Hannah Collock as a source a lot. So in that sense, I think I'd find it really interesting, so we'll see how I go. Those are all the things that I'm planning to read in November. That's definitely far too many books that I can read in 1 month, especially when one of them is War and Peace, and I'm also planning on doing NaNoWriMo, but we will see. Regardless, even if I don't get to all of these non-fiction books, I'm hoping to get to at least one for each challenge, and it's good anyway to chat about some of the non-fiction books that are on my shelf. So thank you very much for watching. Please let me know down in the comments if you are joining in with Non-Fiction November and what you're going to be reading, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.